managing change through effective communications. And tonight's discussion is all about sustaining your passion. And I can honestly say, I have a few choice words about that. And that is, ignore the noise. Ignore the noise. Discussion tonight is all about sustaining your passion. And a lot of us, as from conversations that I've had with people, certainly multiple books that I've read, talk about the inner strength. Now, this is not nebulous, feel-good, kumbaya type thinking. This is really the core of how we sustain ourselves. And I just want to read you just one of the quotes. Yes, it's from my book, one of my books, that says, to this point, the individual has always been or had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes even frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. Friedrich Nietzsche, 1844 to 1900. These words are probably the most difficult for most of us in this day and age. Now, I kind of gave you a little hint there. In this day and age, to understand, comprehend, and then follow. We are susceptible, bombarded every single day by billions of data points. And not only social media, moreover, our very social community has an unspoken expectation that we will follow a directive, an unspoken directive. And when we talk about personal and professional development, let's kind of break that down and say, are we talking about your cultural personal development? Is it your career and specific industry? And then the level that you've so far attained and those prodigies you're following. You see, our world is complicated. And as much as people would say, well, let's make it easy, or it is, only when you have a sense of yourself that life becomes simple. Because you are not distracted, bamboozled, or even led astray by those that would just make a lot of noise around you, intimidating or coercing you to act differently. So let's kind of take a quick look at some of this. I would like to introduce you to the last, I think 3 years of notes. These are my little notebooks that I write things in. Now, what on earth has this got to do? These are my notebooks. These are my little pads. What has this got to do with sustaining your passion? I'm sure you've heard and know of the benefit of writing a diary, of keeping a journal. Have you, though, looked back on that journal and seen what you wrote, what was top of mind, what was of concern? And if you haven't, I'll ask you then, just literally over the next 30 days, that's all it will take, God forbid it takes longer, tweet, that you write down in random format things that are on your mind, things that pop into your head that you just think about, especially in that alpha state as you wake up in the morning. That's probably the best time. At the same time, as I say that, as you're going through your day and you're engaging with other people, managing your affairs, and I'm going to share with you a few of those taken from my notes, okay? I'm going to kind of give you a heads up as to why and how this can be beneficial. Because I really believe that it's not just in knowing, rather it's in the execution. And the execution must come from a big enough why. It must come from a stimulation of pain or pleasure. I accept both, because that is life. And then I interpret that meaning. I interpret that meaning for my benefit. You've heard me use the term favorable gambit, a mutually collaborative effort. We use that in alignment optimization, where we've agreed that given all the data points, the value we subscribe to those data points, and the goals or objectives we're wishing to achieve, this is our initial foyer, our initial push, our initial try at achieving those goals and objectives. And we are willing to accept, we are human, we are fallible, we have humility, that if we don't achieve those outcomes, we're willing to change up. We're willing to, as my mother would always say, dip and stir. Let's try again. Let's go for it again. Let's replan, refocus, re-aim at our desired outcome and goal. Because life is dynamic and it's constantly changing. So let's take a quick look. A couple of notes that I did pull up from my scribblings was a time where I was traveling back and forth to Ithaca, New York. And it's basically, I think, a 6-hour drive from where I live in New Jersey. And one thing I wrote down here was creativity, comprehension, review, historical. Now, what on earth was I talking about? Well, Ithaca is a very historical town. The colleges, Cornell, are replete with very intelligent people. Just as any positive side, there is a downside, which I learned very quickly from some of the financial advisors that I was working with. It's a totally different world. These are people who manage large sums of money, wealthy money. I'm not talking $600,000. I'm talking more like $600 million portfolios. And one of the observations was, and still is today, that some of the students who attend some of these universities, they blow out. Now, you and I might think, well, your time to excel is in your teens and 20s and maybe early 30s. Well, some of these students blew out in their late teens, early 20s because of pressure, because there was an imbalance in their life. So how do we counter that? How can we capture them? How can we retrieve them from going over the edge and taking that pain to suffering to futility and therefore killing themselves? Because that's what they did. They committed suicide. The nets that I saw over these ravines, these rivers, these large falls, as I thought, was to stop rocks from falling. In fact, they were to stop the students from being washed away when they did commit suicide. Well, how do you sustain your passion? Can you find solace in expressing yourself? Audio files, written word. Can you go to a library meeting, an association meeting? It doesn't have to be an AA or substance abuse. It could be a simple, let's talk about how the city was built. How did other cultures, how did other nationalities, how did other societies build and sustain themselves? Why do I choose that perspective? Because today's standard of living derives from that effort that our ancestors or others put forth. If you don't think in this term, then you're absolutely right. I bow my head to you. Life is a waste of time. Life cannot be, your situation in life at this moment in time cannot be surmounted. On the other hand, if I take a moment and through humility, through a moment of reflection, I say to myself, how did I get here? How did my parents get here? How did their parents, my grandparents, ancestors? You see, the strength of our community, albeit the strength of what's in our mind, comes from our ancestors. What I realize, and this is a person who's talking that has not met, on my father's side, most of their ancestry. Yet on my mother's side, I have an immediate connection with my grandfather. Very strong personality, very disciplined. So I use that going forward. That's the asset. That's the staying with your passion and your strength. That's my thinking. So take the experience of those that have gone before, look at how they managed to carve out their life, the pros and the cons, the not so successful attempts, yet they forged ahead. They found a stone in the land, and the hoe had to break that stone, or you had to pull the hoe back and take a sledgehammer, maybe yank that stone out of the ground. That is your challenge, the stone in the ground. Being futile, thinking futile, and saying, well, I have a hoe and the hoe's not taking it out, the horse is not able to pull that object out of the ground, that's pain. Suffering is, I have no other option. The solution is, what are other farmers doing? What have other farmers done? What other industries can I learn from that I can adapt a technique? Interesting. A simple ride up to Ithaca can give you very interesting. And again, these come from oh my goodness, the last 4 or 5 years of traveling, and local traveling, of course, United States, and writing it down so that perhaps one day I can look back and read my own thoughts, not just autobiographies, which I have quite a few up here. Together, they can help me address some of the concerns that I have. It's not always doing it yourself. It's not always going to the latest and greatest personal and professional development program. It's, in fact, in most cases, learning from those who have honed their skills and made a life that we can exemplify, we can mimic in some cases. Most importantly, and I think this is really the coup de grace, we can take what they have done, others have done, and make it our own. What is the phrase? You become the agent of change. What is a real definition of a leader? Allowing other people to believe they've done it themselves. What is a transformational leader? Another level. Oh my God, it's going higher and higher and higher. Transformational leaders are people that will identify and help you craft a latent skill, a desire even, a will, a dream, an aspiration. Build a strength around it, like a moat, right? Like a lighthouse. Look at a lighthouse on the end of a peninsula. It looks like it's can be knocked over, yet its footings are deep, right? Like the baobab tree, huh? Like the weeping willow. And then you have learnt from your environment how to give and take, ebb and flow, like a willow, weeping willow, right? It lets the wind blow through its leaves, yet its roots are deeply grounded into the ground, deeply embedded into the ground. All right, enough of that. But that is the point. That is the point. All right, here's another one. Oh my goodness. Working with a group of consultants, and I put down here, create a campaign list, campaign automation, and then predefined fields. Now this was a project I was working with in another state. We were creating modules to help service a statewide program. And the issue was, how can we best collect the data from the fields and be able to manage the multiple programs without people abusing the system? And we came away with, instead of looking at it as a policing, we said, what if we asked the people how many services they needed so that we could provide them? Now this was kind of interesting because it was a small scale on a state level, but it was a small scale. And what we came out with was, again, we're looking for solutions, we're looking for how to manage life's changes, how to help other people while helping ourselves. We said, move all content onto a customer-centric platform with a general repository. So we created, think about this, you have a problem, okay, how can you solve this problem? In this case, the issue was, how do we collect the data in a friendly way so that people are willing to give us the data and not hold back and try and circumvent the situation and in some cases land on their own minefields. And what we did was, it was all done all the heavy lifting was done up front, where we had the right presence of people speaking to them. We had the right representation of people speaking with them. Notice I changed that word, to and then with. And then we had a fielding of possible options given from provided by people who have already used the system, the previous system. Then we went to the developers of the software and said, how do we build these fields into your platform, into your CC system? And then we came back and we then slowly rolled out how an individual experience was, what were some of the tweaks, what were some of the issues, both in technology and both in deliverables, both in federal and state mandates, because obviously there's a lot of rules and regulations on these kinds of programs, and most importantly, how the client-facing employee is going to engage and learn and adapt and make the program really take off and work. So let's look at our own passion. Here you are, you have a problem, you have a challenge. Are you taking in the right amount of information? Have you considered all the various information options? See, right there is probably where I think most of us, instead of opening up, I like to use the word eclectic, we start to use horse blinders, and then we use binoculars, even though binoculars, I know they look further down the road, but maybe these are short-sighted binoculars. And then we put dirt in front of them. Right? We put dirt in front of them. We're like, oh my God, there's no solutions, there's no answers. The ability to get to that stage is progress, is intelligence, is create, develop, produce mindset. Just that alone, I'm not even talking about a solution yet. I'm just talking about it, when you face a problem, do you come with it with trepidation and say, oh my God, you throw your hands up, it's all over? Or once again, are you drawing on, can you draw on your past experiences? And then intelligently, I use the word intelligently to say you harness that fear, right? You take management of that fear. I don't like the word control. It sounds absolute, and we know absolute is always just for a short period of time, as long as we'd like it to be, but not always. So that's the first. Do we take that position of, am I looking at all the possible options that are already available to me? And can I create additional options? Then secondly, in what order should I begin to put forth, right, my effort? How should I play out my hand, if you wish, as a deck of cards in a game, right? Which I don't play cards, so maybe that's not the best example. Just those two alone, I'm going to leave it at that at this stage, just those two alone will open up options for you. You have to be willing, by the way, to want to do this. You have to be willing to want to explore, want to look at your frailties. What did we say before? Humility. What are your own shortcomings? What have you been taught that actually holds you back, as opposed to thinking you've got all the answers? Because, let's face it, if we had all the answers, would we even be in the position of asking how to get out of this particular situation? Wouldn't we have, like a good GPS system, navigated our way around or away from and or avoided being in the current situation? So that in and of itself teaches us we don't exactly have all the answers. It's called risk management, by the way, for those in project management. Let's look at one more, and then I'm going to kind of wrap up with a little story. This one, oh my goodness, this one, all right, so this one is about a situation I came across when I was driving. It was to, where was this? Isla Marauder is the second Keys in Florida, and I'm not sure how many keys there are now. It slips my mind. and my car broke down. And I had recently, I say recently, 2 years, come to this country. And I wanted to go down to the Keys. I heard it's, incredible. Hemingway's house is down there. The Marines and Special Forces with the naval base, of course, on the last Keys have exercises down there. And if you're fortunate enough, you can see some of the exercises. In the mangroves, you can row your boats and get lost, although there is a tracking device on them so that you can get lost pleasantly without freaking out. My car broke down. Going through the Blue Ridge Mountains, absolutely gorgeous. The mist, the morning dew. I mean, it's, as they say, God's country. My car decided to put me down, and I was traveling pretty much by myself. I was expecting to meet up with some people when I got down there, and I really didn't know all the services that were available on at the time, and I got a membership with AAA. Which my parents said, you got to get a membership. You're not going to be on ours. You got to get your own. So that was the first. That wasn't so strange though, because they made me independent from a very young age. So that was okay, and that was just kind of a continuity of one's development. Okay, being independent and knowing how to be. With the breakdown, and I think it was in North Carolina, Tennessee, North Carolina. Beautiful, beautiful area. At the time, my voice, my accent was much stronger recently in the country. And the looks I got almost said I was literally an alien to that region, okay? What was juxtaposed to that expression and surprise of the people that I was talking to, I stopped off at a diner. The car was pulled into the garage. I was eating. I was talking with people. I told them my car was down. The guy came into the diner, sat down with me, was talking, got a cup of tea, which I did pay for. It was strange because on the one case they were like, "Where are you really from?" And on the other case, well, he has AAA. Now you might say, well, what on earth has that got to do with staying in your zone, in the passion, how to maintain your passion? Well, number one, don't break apart who you are, what you represent. And you might say, well, how do you do that? Well, many of us assimilate into groups. Look at many relationships at work where you become the environment. In relationships, people become what they think the other partner wants to see and be and experience. And then down the road, we push back. We say, well, no, that's not me. That expression is kind of annoying if you think about it, because every action, every behavior, every word that you utter, is that not you speaking? Or are you speaking? Is something else in you speaking for you? Well, the deal is, having AAA identified me as someone who they could feel comfortable with. It's a national program. It has all the benefits. I have my ID. They felt safe. Yet the voice and the way I look in representing their identity was a mixed match. What? Was a mismatch. There you go. Was a mismatch. So how many times have you found yourself in a situation where what you are and represent is not received in the way that you feel it should be? How many times have you spoken to people and said, well, we don't quite understand you. We don't quite accept you. We don't understand you. Have you therefore succumbed to that social, cultural, that ethos of you have to be what we identify you as? Or before you say no, before you say I'm hogwash as opposed to hogwart, how many non-speaking English children favor the English terms and technologies and idioms over their culture from their parents, from their own country? Let's be careful. We lose the diversity. We lose the richness that those other cultures bring to this new community. When we are afraid to express ourselves in our natural manner, then we lose. And so does the community, by the way. Some of you know that I use this phrase, are we ready to identify each other more over than just black and white? It's not a nationality, it's not a culture. It's a specious term that we've become comfortable with. Oh yes, you forgot, we're talking about managing life's changes, not just the superficial personal professional development programs that say, do this and everything will work out. Life is not 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, A, B, 1, 2, on, off. It's a dynamic, constantly evolving environment that your own belief systems, your own judgments, will always be brought into question. And based on your strategy, the gambits that you throw out, and life's reply, that litmus test, you have to then recalibrate and play your next hand. So I shared with you these 3 very different examples of how to stay in your passion. It's not just about you can. It's not just about, well, get up in the morning and sing Kumbaya 10,000 times, right? It's about the voice that's in us that has been established since our infancy. And are we willing and courageous enough to face it? And then are we courageous and strong enough to navigate it as the captain of a ship? And most importantly, are we willing to face the headwinds of society at any time in man's evolution on this planet? That's the power and strength of when we talk about managing life's changes and having that passion that you don't have to be hostile, you don't have to be belittled, but rather you engage with people at a level and you can always kind of raise them up, always challenge them a little bit more on what they believe and what you think is the right way. Embrace them, include them. I talk about collaborative efforts. Include them in the decision-making process. And that's what I did when I was down in North Carolina, Hennessy, heading to Isla Morada, which is the second key in the Florida Keys. I asked them about their lives, about their culture, and most importantly, about their ancestors. It's amazing, when you ask people about their ancestors, you see a calming effect happening. You see a thought, a thinking mind begin to reflect. And now communications is more mutual, is more human, is more, what can we discover that's interesting about each other as opposed to different. Managing change through life's experiences, through effective communications that are mutual. Let's go back and let's just take a look at our lives and say, where do I want to go from here? What have I learned? Where do I want to go from here? Have I done a journal? Can I do a 30-day journal and just reflect? What's on my mind? Where do I want to go? It's more than just a certificate of an academic lesson. It's more than just what even our parents have taught us, because the new world has given us new challenges. And are we prepared for those? Can we look back in our arsenal of resources and begin to craft a new weapon, if you will, that will help us forge ahead? This is what being in your passion, remaining in your passion, is all about. This is Ronald Allen, Managing Change Through Effective Communications. You definitely know where to find me. The site is back up. We are definitely continuing to craft out our newsletters. You'll see that on ronaldmallen.com. Audio files are being put up as we speak. And of course, you can see the success. It's all in your mind on Udemy. You see a link on the website under, I believe it's store. Of course, our blogs, posting articles such as these live chats, which are also on the site and of course on YouTube. And we do welcome your comments and concerns. I have also relaunched the community, renaming it Managing Life's Changes on Facebook. It's a free platform. I encourage you all for comments. Please be respectful. That is all I ask. And of course, I wish you the very best. Ronald Allen, Managing Change Through Effective Communications. You know where to find me.